Tonight, organised labour holds nationwide protest against proposed bill seeking removal of minimum wage from the exclusive list. Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai insists he will not negotiate with bandits nor grant them amnesty, says over 900 people killed in 2020 alone. More states and governors receive COVID-19 vaccines as they encourage others to enroll for inoculation. And U.S. President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill passes Congress. For sports, business and later, international news from our London studios.
On business news tonight, Nigerian Stock Exchange becomes publicly listed company after receiving final regulatory approvals of the demutualization process.
On sports news tonight, Enyimba kick off their campaign in the group stage of the CAF Confederation Cup with a vital win against Libyan side Al Ahly Benghazi in Aba.
From Abuja, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, uncovers 70 billion naira fuel subsidies fraud, threatens to arrest more suspects.
Members of organised labour in Abuja have staged a protest at the National Assembly to challenge the bill seeking to amend the National Minimum Wage Act. The amendment, being sponsored by a member representing Sabongeri Federal Constituency of Kaduna, wants to transfer the subject matter of minimum wage prescription from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list set out under the second schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended. But the organised labour says such move is a breach of the international labour law agreements which Nigeria subscribed to and is detrimental to the welfare of its members. Meanwhile, leadership of the National Assembly says the bill in question will be quashed. Our correspondent Emperor Simon reports.
The Unity Fountain in Abuja is the venue for the takeoff of the protest, and members of the organised labour converge one after the other as early as 7 in the morning. The president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Ayuba Waba, arrives in company of other labour leaders and immediately addresses the crowd.
Let us ask him, how much is his salary per month? That Betty. How much is he earning? We are told, and nobody have controverted this fact, they are collecting 13 million per month. How can he, in his right senses, now say that 30,000, the current minimum wage, is too much for Nigerian workers? Can we say shame to him? Shame! Certainly Nigerian workers are not happy. He must withdraw that bill with immediate effect.
From there, the protesters marched through the street of Abuja, carrying placards with different inscriptions that express their concerns. They arrived at the gate of the National Assembly and forcefully pushed their way through the gate, defying all attempts by security personnel to stop them. The Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate meets the protesters halfway and tried to engage them, but they will not yield, insisting they must get to the Assembly complex. In front of the complex, the NLC and TUC presidents reiterate their concerns as they present the letter of their protest to representatives of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, who assure them that their grievances will be addressed.
We will stand by you to ensure that the fundamental rights of every worker is not only enforced, but is ensured and guaranteed. The only justice that bill is to kill the bill.
With those words of assurance, the protesters dispersed one after the other, but the NLC says it's not going to sleep unless the matter is laid to rest.
The big question that is on the mind of many Nigerians is how soon would we begin to see the implementation of the national minimum wage, especially in many of the states where payment of the minimum wage is still a big issue. From the National Assembly, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Apart from Abuja, Labour Union activists across the northern part of the country also joined the protests against the planned removal of the national minimum wage from the exclusive list. From the northwest to the northeast, the unionists took their protests to the State Houses of Assembly, where they asked lawmakers reject the proposal.
Members of the Kano State chapter of the Nigerian Labour Congress and their affiliates arriving the State House of Assembly to demand that their lawmakers reject the proposal to allow state governors to decide minimum wage.
We should be peaceful. We will go and deliver our message to the Speaker and the members of the State House of Assembly.
In Taraba State, the unionists were initially resisted from entering the State House of Assembly premises. However, following pressures, they were given access into the premises to submit their letters to the leadership of the State Assembly. In Katsina State, the workers marched through the streets of the state capital to the House of Assembly, where they submitted their protest letter to the Speaker of the Assembly. In Kaduna State, members of the organized labor marched along major roads in the state capital, carrying placards with various inscriptions. Singing solidarity songs, the protesters proceeded to the Kaduna State House of Assembly to register their displeasure with the proposal. The Zamfara State chapter of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress submitted their protest letter to the leadership of the State Assembly.
We and the executive part of the government, we are doing everything possible to see that we come to your aid at this very important issue.
Workers in Kwara marched from the Labour House to the post office, chanting solidarity songs to press home their demands. They also have an axe to grind with the state government.
The Labour movement was able to meet the Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kwara State. And by the time we met him, he said, as for now, they can only be able to pay level 1 to 6, which is not good to us. Because by paying level 1 to 6 without any agreement, I think the state government has violated the law, most especially the labor law.
In Adamawa State, it's no different, as officials of the Nigerian Labour Congress and their affiliates expressed their displeasure with the proposal. Members of the organized labor in Sokoto also took their protest to the State House of Assembly, where they told the state lawmakers that they would resist any attempt to allow state governors to decide minimum wage for workers.
I want to greet everybody, and I want you to pull your temper. We ask to be let in here.
This happened earlier in Lagos. Workers in the commercial city, also in solidarity with their counterparts across the country, they hit the streets to vent their disapproval with the proposed removal of the minimum wage from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. They're promising to continue the action until the lawmakers listen to them. It's also a similar story across other southern states in the country, where workers say they will not back down on their protest until the bill is quashed.
I want to greet everybody.
Members of the organized labor in Bayelsa State taking to the streets of Yenagoa. They are joining the national action against the proposed legislation to remove the minimum wage payment from the exclusive to the concurrent list. Their visit to the State House of Assembly is not in vain, as they get a promise of support.
We are here to make laws that will improve the lives of Bayelsans. And as soon as such a bill gets our assembly, definitely we will do the needful. I want to encourage them to go about their protest in a very peaceful and lawful manner.
Policemen joined the protesters in Delta State as they marched their way to the State Assembly. They want the federal government to focus on other matters.
Why are we not making laws to develop our people? Why are we not making laws to improve the welfare of our people? Why are we not making laws to improve the working conditions of Nigerians?
So, Mr. Speaker, we'll receive your speech. Mr. Speaker will talk with his colleagues. And when that time comes, if at all it gets here, the amendment bill gets here for ratification, Delta will make history by standing on the path of truth.
Armed with placards showing their demand, the Labour members march in the streets of Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, to demonstrate their displeasure with the bill. It's not a futile effort marching to the state legislative complex, where the leadership of the assembly promises that the bill will not sail through the state chambers. In Ogun State, the protesters marched through Abeokuta, the state capital. They promised to oppose any attempt to decentralize the minimum wage. The days to come will determine if these reactions will affect the passage or rejection of the bill.
In other news, a senior lawyer and rights activist, Mr. Femi Falana, has disagreed with the federal government's plans to plough the recovered assets of £4.2 million into some federal projects. Mr. Falana argues that the money should go into the coffers of the Delta State government based on the international law that the victim should be compensated. He was guest on our program, Politics Today.
The British government cannot dictate to Delta State what to do with its own money. That is the prerogative of the House of Assembly of that state to appropriate the money that has been paid back into the account of that state, having been recovered in the United Kingdom. That's the law. In fact, the trial judge in these cases, the trial judges, if one of them express agony, disappointment with the fact that this huge money has left the poverty-stricken state, Delta State in the Niger Delta region. The court said that. It didn't say, oh, this money belongs to the federal government.
So, I mean,
the federal government, as I said, should be commended for pursuing this matter.
So, should the federal government go ahead and spend this money legally, what will happen?
No, the federal government will have to be challenged. More so that there is a precedent. You cannot treat equals unequally.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is calling on the federal government to ensure that the £4.2 million loot recovered from former Delta State Governor James Ibori be returned to Delta State. The lawmakers insist that the fund was stolen from Delta State and as such should rightly be returned to the state. The fund, according to them, is needed for infrastructure development. This was a resolution reached after a motion of urgent public importance, which was sponsored by all the lawmakers from Delta State. Meanwhile, the lawmakers insist the total money recovered is £6.2 million and not £4.2 million as is being reported. The House is also asking the Federal Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General of the Federation to furnish them with all particulars relating to the recovered money. In part two, after the break, Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai insists he will not negotiate with bandits nor grant them amnesty. Says over 900 people have been killed in 2020 alone. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Organized Labour holds nationwide protest against proposed bill seeking removal of minimum wage from the exclusive list. Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai insists he will not negotiate with bandits nor grant them amnesty, says over 900 people killed in 2020 alone. More states and governors receive COVID-19 vaccines as they encourage others to enroll for inoculation. And U.S. President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill passes Congress. Let's turn our attention now to security. The Kaduna State government says a total of 937 people were killed and 1,962 others kidnapped by bandits throughout Kaduna State in 2020 alone. But the state governor, Nasir El-Rufai, is insisting he will not engage the bandits in any dialogue nor grant them amnesty. He made the comments at the presentation of the state's 2020 security report to traditional rulers, members of the civil society organizations, and the media in the state capital.
It's an event put together by the Kaduna State government to present the 2020 security report at the State Government House. Government officials, traditional rulers, security agencies, as well as civil society organizations all gather for the presentation. The State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs kickstarts the event by highlighting some of the factors that contribute to the aggravation of insecurity, as well as the sequence of the attacks between January and December of 2020.
The main security challenges affecting some parts of Benungwari, Giwa, Igabi, and Chukun local governments are banditry and kidnapping. There were hardly even more ruinous killings and reprisal attacks from people who presume the crimes are perpetrated by certain ethnic groups. The misconceptions frequently lead to ethnic and communal clashes, which further aggravate the tense situation and increase the number of casualties in the area.
After his presentation, he then hands over copies of the report to Governor Nasir El-Rufai and other concerned parties.
Thank you.
For Governor El-Rufai, the report captures the pains of individuals, families and communities affected by activities of those he calls criminals and outlaws, as well as the measures taken by the Kaduna State government and security agencies in dealing with the challenges.
Our position in the Kaduna State government has been clear, unequivocal and consistent. Bandits, cattle rustlers and armed militias must be degraded and decimated to a state of unconditional submission to constituted authority. We will neither negotiate with criminals of any description, nor support any grant of amnesty to them.
The takeaway from this presentation is the need for strong collaboration with all relevant stakeholders that will lead to restoration of peace and security to the state and prevent bandits from unleashing terror on innocent residents.
Let's toss it over now to Terry Kumi in Abuja for more on the news at 10. Hi, Terry.
Hello, Amarachi, and welcome to the nation's capital. The newly appointed chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Abdurrashid Bawa, says the anti-corruption body has identified about 70 billion naira fraud in the fuel subsidy program of the federal government. Mr. Bawa stated this in an interview with journalists after testifying in a 1.4 billion naira fraud trial involving an oil company, Nadabu Energy, at the Lagos High Court. Although the trial predates his appointment as EFCC chairman, Mr. Bawa has been involved in the investigation of the matter, becoming the first EFCC boss to give evidence in court. The EFCC accused the first defendant, Abubakar Ali Peters, and his company, Nadabu Energy, of allegedly using forged documents to obtain 1.4 billion naira from the federal government as oil subsidy, after allegedly inflating the quantity of PMS purportedly supplied. The defendants had pleaded not guilty to the charge.
This is, I don't want to talk about the facts of
the matter because it's going to be, it's in court, it's sub judice for me to discuss. But it's part of the several cases that we have charged in court in 2012 after we concluded investigation on petroleum subsidy fraud-related cases. As you are aware that even last week we secured conviction of Pago Petroleum Limited as being promoted by one Mr. Oluwasegun Ogunbambo. We have made a lot of recoveries, from the petroleum subsidy cases. I think we have identified fraud of about 70 billion, and as at now we have recovered over 20 billion from such, cases. But criminal trials, of course, is being dictated by the statutes, the procedural laws, the Evidence Act, etc. I myself, in this case, I have been in the witness box in the last 5 years, but the trial is ongoing, and I believe, justice will be served at the end of the trial.
Now, more state governors have been receiving the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and they're encouraging citizens in their states to follow suit. In Kaduna State, Governor Nasir El-Rufai took his first dose of the COVID-19 AstraZeneca COVID vaccine alongside his deputy and the State Commissioner of Health. He appealed to the people of the state to still observe all the safety guidelines. A similar exercise was also carried out in Ekiti State, where Governor Kayode Fayemi and top government officials and some frontline health workers received the first jab of the vaccine. The governor says the vaccines are necessary in the interest of public health. Well, Governor Badaro of Jigawa State also received the first dose of the vaccine at the Government House Clinic in Dutse, after the state received 68,520 doses. He is hopeful that the vaccine would be able to make people resistant to the virus. And Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu also shares the same belief as he takes the first dose of the vaccine alongside his deputy, some top government officials, and traditional rulers in Akure, the state capital. Governor of Ebonyi State, David Umahi, has asked youths in the state to remain steadfast in the pursuit of their dreams. He made the comments at the end of the Ebonyi End SARS Youth Summit, which brought together youths from the 13 local government areas of the state. The governor says the summit serves as an avenue to inculcate right values aimed at making them better citizens.
If you are looking for mentorship,
this summit, organized by the Ebonyi State government, came about as a result of last year's protest against the Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS. The roll call here is of outstanding Nigerians cutting across sports, religion, and entertainment. They're here to motivate the youth and dissuade them from destructive tendencies such as was experienced during the 2020 EndSARS protests.
Whatever you are doing, make sure you do it well. Make sure you put everything. Discipline. That's the first one. In everything we do in life, we have to be disciplined. No matter how you see yourself, no matter how small or big you are, even in business, you have to be disciplined. To the youths, I want to say, you can be anything you want to be. You can be anything. Just bear in mind that the decisions you take and the choices you make will definitely decide the seasons of your life.
The governor of Ebonyi State steps up to the podium and he begins his speech by encouraging the youth to remain focused and resist any action inimical to the peaceful coexistence of the country.
Apart from the 3 billion EndSARS empowerment program which is ongoing, this one is a different kind of engagement. So I want to engage 150 of you immediately for further training based on what you want to do in life.
This summit is coming following a directive by President Buhari for state governors to engage with youths across the country and give them an opportunity to air their concerns and find ways of addressing them to avert youth restiveness in the future.
That's all from Abuja, but when the news at 10 returns, Nigerian Stock Exchange becomes publicly listed company after receiving final regulatory approvals of demutualization process. That's on Business News. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The Federal Ministry of Water Resources, through its trimming project, has handed over 7 completed irrigation sectors to farmers in Bunkure local government area of Kano State. The rehabilitation project is part of the federal government's transformation of irrigation management in Nigeria, known as Trimming Project.
This area in Bunkure local government of Kano State is home to the completed 7 irrigation sectors totaling 1,047 hectares of land. It's for that reason that guests are gathered here to witness the handover of the irrigation sectors from the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. There's the Kano River Irrigation and Hadejia Valley Irrigation projects, with the former having the capacity of irrigating 22,000 hectares, out of which 15,000 has been developed through the trimming intervention. National Coordinator of the Transformation of Irrigation Management in Nigeria, or Trimming Project, speaks on this development.
The most advantaged occupation you can engage rural dwellers for food sufficiency, food security, and employment generation is irrigation. That is why the federal government, with the support of the World Bank, embarked on this project. Initially to cost 18 billion, but we expanded the scope to include the works on the tertiary canals, which took it to 23 billion naira. So this is a work of 23 billion naira ongoing.
Located within the Hadejia Jamare Basin, the rehabilitation of Kano River Irrigation Scheme, when completed, will have 14,400 hectares fully irrigated.
I wish to implore the UWA in particular to make good use of this opportunity provided by the Trimming Project to develop themselves and also try to maintain the status of the irrigation project as handed over to them.
Meanwhile, Trimming Project officials say they are confident that when utilized, an estimated 50,000 dry season farmers will benefit from the Kano irrigation farming that will improve food sufficiency and generate income to farmers, even as the papers are signed with the project completion set for 2024.
The River State government has continued with the commissioning of projects in the states, now with the inauguration of a 6.1-kilometer road in Ikwere local government area. At the commissioning, Governor Nyesom Wike restated his commitment to building more infrastructure, challenging the federal government to do more for the state, which he says contributes so much to the national economy. The project was commissioned by former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Austin Opara.
It's the commissioning of more road projects in River State by Governor Nyesom Wike, who is now popularly referred to as Mr. Project in the state. Constructed by an indigenous company, the 6.1-kilometer road connects 3 agrarian communities in Alu, Ikwere local government area. The inauguration eventually turns to a carnival of sort as the governor, known for his love for traditional wrestling, displays the Ekelele dance steps. Governor Wike restates his commitment to develop all parts of Rivers State as he tasks the federal government to also do more for a state he says contributes a lot to national development.
When we invite people to come and commission projects, we go and tell them, don't go there, nothing's happening, it's a hype. Minister of Sports was there yesterday, was it not? Did you not commission the Big Madrid Academy? Minister of Works was there to commission Rebus Flavor, was it not? That was Tuesday hype, it's a 3D. Quack also commissioned Rumor Flavor, it's a hype, is it not? 3D. Donald Duke commissioned Rumor Chronodo, it's a hype. 3D. We are going to commission a Popo Road, it will be hype. 3D. Everything hype, hype. Come and hype your own.
His special guest, a former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Austin Opara, urges the federal government to understudy the agenda of the Wike administration in infrastructure development.
You immediately started commissioning projects in Eleme, Tai, Gokana, Kana, Akukutoro, Ikwere local government, Emowa local government, and many other local governments. You started commissioning. They kept quiet. They said, oh no, you are using multinationals, Julius Berger, CCCC, ROCC. Yesterday we commissioned project. It was done by a local contractor. The one we are doing today is built by a local contractor. So you move into different sectors. You have so surprised their critics that they've given up.
That agenda is what the Rivers State government says is pushing to improve the livelihood of all residents in all communities across the state.
That leads us into more business news. Here's Teniola Shobowale.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Amarachi. Welcome to Business News. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has completed its demutualization plan as the exchange has received final approvals from the Securities and Exchange Commission and Corporate Affairs Commission, respectively. Under the demutualization plan, a new non-operating holding company, the Nigerian Exchange Group PLC, has been created with 3 operating subsidiaries, namely Nigerian Exchange Limited, which will be the operating exchange, NGX Regulation Limited, which will serve as the independent regulation company, and NGX Real Estate Limited, the real estate company. The approvals by the SEC and CAC signify that the NSE can now activate its transition plan to a new operational structure and holding company. The approvals also enable the shares of NGX Group PLC, which have been registered with the SEC, to be allotted to the membership pursuant to the court-approved scheme of arrangement. Global Finance, a prestigious U.S. magazine specializing in financial markets and investment banking, has named the African Development Bank as the best multilateral financial institution in the world for 2021. The award is a global recognition for the path-breaking efforts of the AFDB as it transforms itself into a solutions bank for Africa through a combination of its operation, knowledge services, and investments positioning, which continue to help accelerate Africa's development. This is an affirmation of the success of the operational strategy being pursued by the AFDB under the leadership of Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who was unanimously re-elected to a second consecutive 5-year term as president of the institution last year. The award comes after ratings agency S&P Global affirmed the AFDB's AAA credit rating with a stable outlook in February 2021. Meanwhile, Wednesday's trading session at the NSE ended on a positive note following renewed interest for some high-value equities after the heavy loss recorded on Tuesday. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello, welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's midweek trading and we seem to be having a back and forth movement in the market as the bourse ended in the green by a moderate margin on the day the NSE gets approval to become a publicly listed company on its own exchange. And the bull is back to with a moderate 0.63% rebound from some of Tuesday's losses. And I must say kudos to the industrial goods sector of the NSE. The 1.74% gain on that counter, which is largely attributed to the 8 naira gain from Dangote Cement, countered the losses from the banking as well as the oil and gas sector. And that also lifted the market's value by more than 127 billion naira. Let's look at the activity chart. Today's volume was quite lower by nearly 70%, in contrast to the previous session, as 368 million units worth 4.9 billion naira change hands in 4,437 deals. It's 2 days left is the second week of March. Uncertainty and caution is on the minds of investors. But with more earning results in focus, we can only keep our fingers crossed for the outcome. And that's the Stock Market Report. It's back to you.
Thanks a lot, Laddie. U.S. stock markets also closed midweek trading session with positive sentiments following continuous drop in bonds yield and the passing of the new stimulus package by the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, here are some snapshots of global markets figure for the day. And that's Business News Tonight. I'm Teniola Shubowale. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Welcome back. The U.S. Congress has passed the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill to help Americans deal with the impact of the pandemic. The House of Representatives approved the massive economic aid plan by a vote of 220 to 211 today, along partisan lines, with no Republicans voting in favor. Having already passed through the Senate, this relief package now awaits President Biden's signature to turn it into law. Simon Pusey has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A sixth woman has accused New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour. The aide has accused the governor of inappropriately touching her late last year in the executive mansion in Albany. The accusation comes as Mr. Cuomo, a third-term Democrat, faces calls for his resignation, including from the Democratic leader of the state Senate.
I never touched anyone inappropriately.
The governor has so far denied all the allegations and has said he would not immediately step down. The New York Attorney General is currently investigating his conduct. An official from deposed Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party has died in custody after he was arrested on Tuesday. He is the second party figure to die in detention in almost as many days. Meanwhile, security forces have been cracking down with increasing force on the daily nationwide protests. People can be seen jumping over barricades and scrambling to take shelter after shots were fired. Reports have also emerged that according to police rules, protesters should either be stopped by rubber bullets or shot below the knees. Security forces have been accused of killing more than 50 people in the protests so far. It's been reported that Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, formally complained after a presenter on ITV's Good Morning Britain claimed he didn't believe a word of her highly controversial interview.
I'm sickened by what I've just had to watch.
Ofcom is investigating comments made by Piers Morgan after receiving 41,000 complaints. The presenter has since quit the show after facing a huge backlash. Over 28 million people around the world have now watched the interview between Meghan and Harry and Oprah Winfrey. In a statement, Buckingham Palace have said the race issues raised by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in their interview were concerning and taken very seriously. Health systems in most of Brazil's largest cities are close to collapse due to the overwhelming amount of COVID-19 cases. The country has registered a record daily COVID-19 deaths as more than 80% of intensive care unit beds are occupied in the capitals of 25 of Brazil's 27 states. The country has recorded more than 266,000 deaths and 11 million cases since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, the vaccination campaign is progressing slowly, as only 4.1% of the population has received the jab. Heavy rains have breached a dam on the Hawaiian island of Maui, causing floods that have damaged multiple homes and bridges. The governor has declared a state of emergency after the heavy rains and flooding caused extensive damage to a vast number of properties. Authorities have also ordered the evacuation of several thousand people from communities threatened by rising waters. Youths have clashed with police in Greece at a protest in Athens against police brutality. More than 5,000 people have marched in the capital after a video on social media showed a police officer beating a young man with a baton. Riot police fired tear gas to disperse a group of protesters that broke away from the march and hurled petrol bombs, firecrackers and rocks at officers. The protesters have also set rubbish bins on fire in the streets. Spain has sent an aid plane to Equatorial Guinea as the search for victims of a series of explosions continues for a fourth day. The flight is carrying medicines and medical supplies as the Spanish government is responding to a call for international support from President Teodoro Obiang Nguema, who can be seen at the scene of a deadly blast at a military barracks in the city of Bata that left 98 people dead. Satellite images show the extent of damage as the explosions have destroyed almost all homes and buildings in Bata. Europe's tallest active volcano, Italy's Mount Etna, has lit up the night sky once again. The southeastern crater is at the epicenter of the activity that started on February the 16th and has caused activity for the volcano 11 times in the past 3 weeks. Images show explosions, large plumes of smoke and lava fountains several kilometers high. The last major eruption of Mount Etna was in 1992. And finally, climate activists from Greenpeace have landed a paraglider on top of the European Central Bank's press centre and hung a banner accusing the bank of funding polluters. The two activists can be seen landing at the ECB building in Frankfurt and unfolding a banner saying, "Stop funding climate killers." The protest followed a think tank report which argued that the ECB's lending rules favoured carbon-intensive industries and perpetuated a market failure to properly price polluting assets. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Now, two-time African champions Enyimba International FC has kicked off their campaign in the group phase of the CAF Confederation Cup on a good note. The People's Elephant defeated Libya's Ali Benghazi 2-1 at the Enyimba Stadium in Aba. Austin Oladapo got the opener just within 9 minutes from kick-off. The visitors then equalized 9 minutes later from the penalty spot. Enyimba's Victor Mboma restored their lead on the 43rd minute of the first half to hand the host all 3 points. Paris Saint-Germain and Liverpool FC have advanced to the quarter-final stage of the UEFA Champions League. PSG and Barca played out a 1-1 draw in Paris to help Mauricio Pochettino's side progress to the next round 5-2 on aggregate. Kylian Mbappe got the opener for the hosts from the penalty spot in the 30th minute. Lionel Messi responded with a thunderous strike 7 minutes later. In the other clash, Liverpool progressed 4-0 on aggregate following a 2-0 win against Red Bull Leipzig in Budapest. IOC President Thomas Bach has won an unopposed second term that will keep him in the post until 2025, following a vote on the first day of a virtual IOC session. Mr. Bach received 93 of the 94 eligible votes cast in an online process. The Edo State government has summoned an Abuja-based contractor who is allegedly working without permission on the state's indoor sports complex in the Tete Benin City, the Edo State capital. The facility, according to the chairman of the local organizing committee of the National Sports Festival and Deputy Governor of Edo State, Mr. Philip Shaibu, has been fully renovated by the state government ahead of the games. And that's sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.
And the main news again. The organised labour today held a nationwide protest against a proposed bill seeking the removal of minimum wage from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. The workers say the move contravenes international labour laws. Also today, Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai again said he would not negotiate with bandits nor grant them amnesty. He also said over 900 people were killed by bandits in 2020 alone. That is all on the news at 10. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night.